Hi, I'm T-Jump, the man chair pig of religious apologetics, and you're watching The Atheist Edge.
This is for you, Jim. Suppose you're in a movie theater and you call 911 and you meet the police in the lobby and you tell them there's someone in the theater who's about to try to kill me. The officer asks, hey, can you point this person out for me? And you say, no, I can't, but you can't prove that there's not someone in there who's planning to kill me. Question, what do you think the police would do to you for giving them a false alarm? Think about that next time you tell an atheist that they can't prove God doesn't exist.
Whom did the women see at the empty tomb? A, one man. All right, so the women, I'm not telling you how many women showed up because there's a discrepancy there. But the women showed up to the empty tomb. What did they see? One man, one angel, two men, two angels, or somehow all of the above?
Yes,
Yes.
all of the above.
Yes, that's right. Because Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, all four Gospels have varying discrepancies in this. It could have been a single man who was somehow shining, and then the one angel, and then the two men, then the two angels. But there's Bart Ehrman does a whole thing on this. But yeah, it was all of the above.
During an expedition, we captured some hot women. We were really horny since we had been away from our wives for ages. We decided to rape them, but planned to pull out before we ejaculated, according to custom. Muhammad said, nah, you don't have to pull out, because if you accidentally get your sex slave pregnant, it is Allah's will anyway. Shah Muslim 3371, paraphrased by the author.
Here are just 3 of many U.S. governors who have decided to take a big steaming shit on the Constitution. Iowa Governor Terry Branstad wants Christianity to be declared as the official state religion. Somebody give me an oven mitt for the facepalm. Mary Fallin, governor of Oklahoma, declared 13th of October 2016 as Oilfield Prayer Day. Highlights of the official proclamation include Christians acknowledge such natural resources are created by God, and Christians are invited to thank God for the blessings, His wisdom, and ask for protection. Do you see it? Do you see the eye rolls happening? And the third governor on the list is good old Rick Perry from Texas. In 2011, Texas was ravaged by over 8,000 wildfires. So Rick Perry concluded that his most effective course of action would be to declare 3 days in April as days of prayer for rain in the state of Texas. He additionally held a day-long prayer rally in Houston with 30,000 participants. That's a lot of prayers. The Texas drought continued for 5 more years. Shh. Nobody tell him about the Templeton Foundation's prayer study, okay? Do we really need to start a GoFundMe for these guys so they'll go out and buy this book? Jeez.
From the book, Pulling Back the Green Curtain, the cult compound in India known as Auroville was founded by the Mother, who physically transformed her body into a new type of human by opening the supramental truth consciousness, a new power of spirit.
And I have been there. But we're going to keep going. I don't know how much is listed on here, so I will interject with my little personal stories as we go.
All residents of Auroville must submit to and serve the divine consciousness.
So, submit, yes. But what's interesting is if you want to live there with the community, you have to stay there for 2 years, and you have to bring enough money to live on for 2 years without working. without gaining any money from the community by like working for them. You volunteer, I think, but you don't actually like get money. They'll feed you and let you stay there. And so you earn your place there by like giving your services, but you have to live there with enough money to live on that you just give them like 2 years worth of living money, which is a lot of money. And people come over there from all over the world. So you have to stay there for those 2 years, and then you have to leave for 6 months, and you probably don't have an apartment, so I don't know where you're supposed to stay, but you have to leave for 6 months, and then you can come back and be welcomed into the community permanently. You can raise your children there. They get education. I don't know how good the education is, but it was something that was founded in the 80s by some people from different parts of the world that wanted to create a kind of socialist society. And I know that's a very demonized word now, but it's really just about living off the grid and trying to live where like everybody sort of comes together and tries to be a cohesive community. And in theory, in these smaller groups, it can work a lot better than like on a national scale. They were very protective of their way of life. They were very protective of the details of how they run the whole organization. I went over there when I was backpacking through India, and we stayed there for 6 days. We had a very special permission to stay with them for those 6 days, but they don't usually do that. I'm not sure how they were able to get that permission, but it was like this youth leadership group that I went to India with. So it was like creating leaders out of young people. So because of that, I think we had sort of a special permission to do something like that. And we volunteered. We built some gardens and things. So we were helping out, but it was really interesting. So in the center of the city, they have this big like urn that has sand from all of the places where the people who founded that community came from. So that was pretty cool. But next to that, in the center of the city, is this big giant dome that is big enough to like walk around in. Like it's a big building. But it looks like a spaceship because you have to put on these special socks to walk around in it because the carpet is very white and you don't want to get it dirty, I guess. So I think it's seen though as like it's seen as like a spiritual space. So you go in there to meditate or pray, and it was just a very weird environment in the middle of that. But what's worse is the outside of this giant building dome is covered with real gold. And according to their religious beliefs, gold is supposed to be this kind of like spiritual conductor. But I don't know, it's just a very expensive thing to put in the middle of your community that's big enough to be a building. So they had these like panels, and each panel had a very thin layer of real gold shavings on it. So I have a photograph of me and my group next in front of this big dome on Facebook, so people can see it, and I think we'll probably put it in the video here. We've put it in the video before, actually, I think, when I've talked about this before.
Now you said, I think you mentioned when you were talking to me that there's sort of like a point system for your services.
Yeah, so you go...
so you bring in money,
right?
But then you start with nothing, and you accumulate
points. Yeah.
Effort points.
Yeah. So you have some sort of job within the community that you do. It's either like farming, or they kind of preach themselves to be the most environmentally sustainable community in the world. I don't know if it's actually true, but it makes sense because they're big on like composting and they make a lot of their own food and stuff like that. So they have a lot of like forest garden stuff. They have a lot of they have an Australian forest that I guess imported a bunch of trees from Australia, and they like, I don't know how they did that, but so that was interesting. But the people will come and volunteer from outside the community to work in those forest areas. But if you live in the community, you have to live on this point system where you don't exchange money. You don't work with money at all. You just earn points by working in the community, and then you can go to like different cafes and stuff and spend points. So it's a point system instead of like actual money. And so I don't know how they deal with like people leaving the community to like go into the local markets and like buy things, and if you've lived there, if they have any money for that for you to spend. But it is very isolated, it seems to be, and there's people from all over the world. But they did have like these mess halls where you could get meals for a very cheap price, like a few points, versus like the nicer places that were worth more points. So they still had kind of a class system going on, but I don't know how easy it was for you to earn enough points to be able to go to these different spaces, and if that was on an equal plane or not, if it depended on like how much money you brought in at the beginning or something. But all in all, it was really strange. They had these like cards of the mother. It was like a photograph of this woman, and people would kind of pray to her almost like a Mother Mary. She's not really a deity. She's more of like I guess she's the founder of the group, but she's also seen as like a guru, more so. Like a religious leader who they respect and look up to. And I don't know if she was still alive at the time. I went in 2009. I don't know.
But
I don't know how old she was.
She's not at like prophet level. She's like somewhere below that, maybe.
I don't know. I don't think they would have been too clear about that, because they were very protective of their belief systems and how they ran things. So they were very, I don't know, standoffish, and they didn't like you asking too many questions. So that was a big red flag.
So I have two thoughts so far. And one is, if you're getting raised in that community and you're going to school and you're taking a test, are you allowed to tap into the divine consciousness to answer questions, or is that considered cheating?
No idea.
And then my second question is, do you think that the money is going towards that great grand gold structure? Most likely.
Oh, absolutely. Because how else would they get the money to make that?
It reminds me of,
for sure.
If you've ever watched Arrested Development, you will know this phrase, there's money in that banana stand. I think there's money in that banana stand. One of their brochures states, Auroville is for those who want to live a life essentially divine, but who renounce all religions, whether they may be ancient, modern, new, or future. Side note, I'm not making this shit up. They want you to throw away religion and adopt an unquestioning allegiance to a charismatic spiritual leader. How are those two things any different again? So it reminds me kind of like, I think it's like the Baha'i religion. There are different, religious communities where they do kind of bring in, they allow you to kind of come in with whatever faith, because like all prophets, all faiths are all at least partially correct, or they're all part of the truth. And I don't know if this just makes it easier for them to really pull in anyone, because if they're already telling you that, what you believe is fine.
Well, they're wanting you to denounce all the other religions.
I apologize. I'm misunderstanding that.
Well, yeah.
So they want you to renounce instead of just bring yours in. They just want you to get rid of your old one and take on this new one.
Right.
Okay.
And what was interesting is like being in that community, it's right next to like South Pondicherry, which is like a Christian community within India. There's a lot of crosses everywhere. So that was a little shocking when we were there, because we were so used to seeing like Hindi things. But the community is very closed off from the surrounding area of India. So you're in India. We were backpacking through India for most of our trip before we actually got to Auroville. It was toward the end of our trip. And so we had been kind of like hit with this culture shock when we first got there, and as we were there, of how chaotic and crazy India feels. And like there's just horns everywhere, there's people everywhere, there's noise, everything smells like burning trash and body odor and curry. Like it's very, very intense. And you get used to that. And then we went to Auroville, and like it's this very large community that's like gated in, but it's big enough to where like you can't hear India outside of this place. So it's very, very Western in how everything looks and how the community moves around and everything. So it was like this little bubble of like Western culture inside of the chaos of India and poverty of India, because like people living there are very, very isolated from like the surrounding poverty that that's there. So it was a very weird thing because it didn't seem interested in being of service to the people surrounding that community. It's more just about let's isolate and hold our resources, and they have like exports, they sell things, but they just don't seem to have any sort of charitable thing that they did. And India is like some of the most in need homeless people ever. So it's just like we spent the entire time being really hit with this guilt where we were walking around and big people just coming up to you all day long. And it was really overwhelming. But being in this other place, it was like you're not really in India anymore. And it was very, very strange.
I'm wondering if this system, I mean, in my mind, it really preys upon people who are looking for guidance. Because if you already have a religion or a belief system, some sort of structure that's unfulfilling to you, and these people are saying, renounce your thing and take on this whole new thing, this works better.
People that are religious there live that religion every single day, versus here it's kind of like just on Sundays or just on Wednesdays. And I was really hit with that when I was there, because I was a Christian at the time. I was 19 years old and I was religious. And I really did escape this cult, actually, because I would have really been all for this type of thing at the time. Because I was a Christian, but in India, I was really hit in the face with this idea that like whatever I believe is because of where I was born. And that didn't actually make it true per se. So I didn't really have a reason to believe what I was born into just because I was born into it. And I was really hit with that, and hit with this like authenticity of living your religion every day and having it be this consistent, all the time observance that's woven into your everyday life. And that was something I really admired, and I looked up to that. And I never came close to like converting to Hinduism, but I came back with this sense of like, I need to figure this out, or I need to find something that makes more sense to me. And I would have really liked that, I think, because it's not an organized religion. It doesn't seem to have a lot of the pitfalls of that, at least on the surface. So
I think it's really interesting that a lot of people might be drawn to this because it's so different, and yet it opened your eyes to in a way that kind of led you to not just unquestioningly accept this new system, but to really question what you did and why. And if because I guess you probably, like you said, it was a shock for you to not be living your religion to that level, and what did that mean for you. And so I think that's very interesting, that it kind of pushed you to be a little bit more introspective about your beliefs and kind of led you actually away.
Yeah, for sure. I really didn't, I was so steeped in my religion. I really, really loved it. And it was not questionable to me at all. But then I went through India and I came back and I was like, well, I need to think about it, and I need to, I was kind of on the search for something that would make sense. I think I assumed at the time I was setting aside my parents' beliefs specifically, but I was still believing in like God and a higher power. I just didn't really know what that looked like anymore. And so I was on the search for something like that, that would be different, that would resonate with me. That's how they say it in the religious community. And, you know, in our community, we're like, well, does it have any evidence to back it up? Like, that's what you should base it on. But when you come from that religious standpoint, again, you have that mindset of like, does this speak to me? And am I getting a internal voice drawing me towards something? Like that kind of orientation toward reality is like, it's very natural to somebody who comes out of religion. So it makes them, again, much more susceptible to this kind of thing. So I think I would have been a perfect candidate for them at the time.
So another bullet point, the crime rate has increased dramatically in recent years in this supposedly utopian city. This can be easily explained, though, due to the 3 vortexes of dark energy that have manifested themselves within the community.
Is that what they believe?
I'm assuming that's how they are rationalizing this.
Ah, okay. Yeah. We can't blame us. Yeah.
But that is interesting.
Yeah. Well, and again, you have this community of people who are very excited and trusting, and this was built in the 80s of like, you know, cults and counterculture and things that were, you know, some things that were good, this like rejection of the traditional values and everything, but like it's it makes sense. Like people are very vulnerable in these kinds of belief systems, and so you can really take advantage of that and start, you know, extortion and prostitution and, you know, sex trafficking and all kinds of shit.
Anytime I hear anything about like light or dark energy, there's such nebulous concepts that almost anyone, can feel like that they somewhat understand or feel or sense or something. Yeah. All right, last bullet point. It is the epitome of irony that a town full of people who display such humility and wonder can yet lay claim to the most esoteric secrets of the cosmos.
Yes, and that's,
I mean, if you got it figured out, you got it figured out, you know?
Right. We're like, we have all the humility and yet we have all the answers, and like we have a special ear of higher power. It's extreme arrogance that's painted as selflessness and humility and being a vessel of God. And I don't mean anything. I'm only a vessel, but still, look at me. I'm a vessel of fucking God, you know, like, whoa. That was a fun thing to end on. I think we did kind of announce it on the channel recently, but we pretty much we met before COVID, but we spent so much time together during COVID, we quarantined together that it turned into a very fast-tracked relationship, but with a very solid foundation because we spent all of this time together.
Mm-hmm. And we really did our best to stay away from any dark vortexes that would negatively impact our relationship. So I think it's working out so far.
Yeah. Because I talk about it forever and I listen to it so much of my life. I'm listening to a bunch of arguments about religion and education and stuff. That's what I love about this community is you can learn so much by going to talks and listening to debates, and we're very big on education.
Yeah. Well, if she ever escapes another cult, I'm sure she would love to do a video on it. So.
I escaped a cult. Oh, jeez.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Whenever anybody references wisdom and attributes that to Jesus, those people, it amazes me, have never read the Gospel of Thomas, because it's the Gospel of Thomas is the only place where you find Jesus ever saying anything wise. And that's when one of his disciples said to him, well, what do you think about circumcision? And Jesus said, well, if God meant for people to be circumcised, we wouldn't be born with foreskins.
Right? There's
There we
so
go.
many reasons
the
why.
only fucking wisdom ever attributed to Jesus, and it's a book that isn't even included in the Bible.